So we're going to talk about Chapter 10, which is Geometry, Lesson 1, which is measuring and drawing angles. An angle is two rays with one common endpoint. So what I'd like to do is I'm actually going to draw an angle right now. Yours does not have to be exactly like mine. But if you could make it look something like mine, that would be great. So this right here, this is an endpoint. Because these two, I'll call them lines, they're actually rays. These two rays start here, and the arrow indicates that it keeps on going forever in this direction. And this ray starts here, it keeps on going forever in this direction. What's the difference between a ray and a line? Does anyone know the difference between a ray and a line? Marcello.
A ray goes on forever and the line stops at some point.
No. Good guess. Anyone else? Excellent. So a ray goes on in one direction forever, whereas if these were lines, they would go on in what? Both directions forever. Rays only go on in one direction, whereas a line goes on in both directions. In math, what we do is we give points letter names so you know what we're talking about. So I'm going to label that endpoint point D. We always use capital letters when we're talking about points. So I'm going to call that point D. I'm going to call that point C. It doesn't matter where you put the point as long as it's somewhere towards the end of this ray. And I'm going to put another point here. When we're working with angles, you will always see at least 2 points on every ray. How do I know what letters to use? I make a random guess and I just pick. It doesn't matter. There's no specific strategy to picking the letters. As long as you don't have the same letter repeated more than once. You can't use the same letter more than once. And in yesterday's lesson, do you remember we talked about what we called this thing right here? Yes, it is a ray. That's a ray. And that's a ray. But do you remember yesterday we called this thing a side? And we called this a side. What is it a side of? Each of these are sides of the what? Angle.
Angle.
And because it's an angle, we call that endpoint a vertex. Is that making sense so far? We have a side, and an endpoint. When you have two sides that come from one endpoint, you get an angle. That's known as an angle. Does that make sense so far? Perfect.
Yes.
Now, do you notice, I'm going to use a different color for this. Actually, I'm going to make a new circle so it's clean. I'm going to make a new circle right here, a new angle. I'm going to start my angle with an endpoint and a ray. And mine is just going straight across. And I looked up, I saw Emiliano first, so I'm going to call this point E. And then I saw Noel Fonte, so I'm going to call this point N. Is that a line? That is not a line. That is a ray. Right? A number line goes on in both directions forever. This one does not. This is a ray. It goes on in one direction. This dot here means it ends, it terminates, it stops or starts right there. And the ray goes in this direction towards the right forever. That's what that little arrow at the end means. It means it goes on forever. What would happen if I picked that little arrow, that little ray up, and I started twisting it? If I kept the endpoint there, but imagine if I twisted it all the way around, what shape would I have? This is not a hard question. Nick F. I can't hear you.
A circle?
Keep your mic right there, okay? I would have a circle. Does that make sense so far? If I kept point E right there, but I spun this all the way around, it would make a circle, right, Nick?
Yeah.
Now, Nick F. Have you ever skateboarded?
No.
Do you know anything about skateboarding? Have you ever snowboarded?
No.
If I'm on my skateboard or my snowboard and I jump and spin around one whole time, do you know what we call that?
360.
Who said that?
Marcello.
We call that a 360. What is does anyone know? Have you heard that 360 term before? What does 360 mean? Why do they call it a 360, Emma?
It's 360 degrees around.
Right. So if point N were to go all the way around, it would be 360 degrees. Does that make sense? I want you to write this. 360 degrees. That's the little symbol for degrees. Are in a circle. There are 360 degrees in a circle. Why? We'll have a conversation about that later. Imagine I'm on my skateboard, but I don't do a 360. I do part of a 360. So maybe I'm going to pick a random here. And I looked up, I saw Jayla. So I'm going to call that point J. So if I'm on my skateboard or my snowboard, or if I turn my body around and I go from here to here, did I go in a circle? I did not go in a circle. What I do see is I have the side where I started, the side where I ended, and I've got this portion right there. Do you know what we call that?
Angle.
That's an angle. I also want you to notice there's this space right here. This is known as the interior. What do you think interior means?
Inside.
It's the space inside the angle. Now let's be geniuses. If the space inside the angle is called the interior, would anyone like to make a guess what we would call the space outside the angle? Selma?
Exterior?
Very good. That is the exterior or outside. Is that making sense so far? Angles are parts of a circle. Every single time you see an angle, you need to understand that that angle represents part of a circle. The one that I made up here, part of a circle. The one that I made down here, part of a circle. Every time you see an angle, it's part of a circle. So far, so good? Excellent. What I can also do is record the parts of these angles. This part right here. We can give it a name. And we name it based on the points that we see. This right here is a ray, and it's got E and J on it. So we're going to call that ray E J. You might also call it ray E J. You can capitalize it or lowercase it, it doesn't matter. There's also some math symbols that you can use to abbreviate. If you do not want to write the word ray EJ, you can do this. E J, and then above it, you make a little arrow. That all means exactly the same thing. Ray EJ, ray EJ, ray EJ. Those mean exactly the same thing. When you do that, you're naming the side of the angle. Is there another ray that makes up that angle? What is the name of the other ray that makes up that angle? I have ray E J. What about this one? Abby?
Ray EN?
Right. So again, we can call this ray E, and we always use capital letters. We never use lowercase. Lowercase letters are used for our variables, remember? Way back, I said we always use lowercase. This is why. Or we could call it ray EN or ray EN. Mr. D, this is too hard. I'm confused. I'm okay so far. Yeah, I'm good. Keep going. Make it harder. Perfect. Could you have Mr. Protractor out, please? If you do not have a protractor, that's okay. You can just watch. I'm going to go to a new page. I want you to watch and not draw yet, and you'll find out why in just a second. I'm going to make a random angle. And I'm going to name this angle. I saw Sophia, so I'll make that point S. I saw Christina, so I'll make that point C. And I saw Alex. I will make this point A. So right now, I have ray SC and ray SA. I would like to know the measure of that angle. How am I going to do that? Well, I know that this angle starts here and it rotates this much. Is that 360 degrees? Can we agree it's going to be less than 360 degrees? Perfect. So what you do is you're going to use your protractor to find out the measure of that angle. Let me show you how. You all have different kinds of protractors, so you might need to change your directions a teeny tiny bit. My protractor has a little hole in it. That hole goes on the vertex. So I'm going to do that right now. Can you see how the hole is on the vertex? Now, over on the other end, I'm going to keep that hole in the vertex. Can you see there's this line here? I want this black line that's on the protractor to be lined up with my ray. So I'm going to keep the vertex on the hole and turn my protractor until this line lines up with this line over here. See this one over here? I'm going to keep rotating. Step number one is line up the hole on your protractor with the vertex and then the 0 over here. So far, so good. Now, I've got two groups of numbers. I've got numbers on the top that start at 180 and go down. And I've got numbers that start at 0 and go up as I go over. So what you need to ask yourself, if my degrees of rotation are starting here, this is going to be 0 degrees right here. Where's my 0? Is my 0 on the top row of numbers or the bottom row of numbers? Emma.
Your 0 is on the bottom.
Good girl. Keep your microphone right there. I am now, because my 0 is on the bottom, see there's 10 right there. I'm not going to use the top numbers at all. I'm going to pretend they're not there. So now what I do is I go all the way up to where this angle is, where this ray is. What number is this ray pointing at?
50.
So this angle has 50 degrees of rotation. Could you copy that into your notebook, please? It's not going to be perfect, and that's okay.
Should we use the protractor?
You can, or you can just draw it for right now.
Okay.
I'm not worried about it being perfect right now. That 50 degrees of rotation, is that the interior of the angle or the exterior of the angle?
Interior.
That's the interior. Or inside. Understand that that angle is part of a circle. Circles have 360 degrees. If I were to continue going all the way around, it would make a circle. I need a mathematical genius right now. Anyone? Jayla. If I have 50 degrees of internal rotation, how many degrees of external rotation are there?
310.
A plus for Jayla today. How did you get that?
I just subtracted 50 from 360.
You're absolutely right. Now, there are some very, very, very common angles that you should know about. I'm going to draw them, and I want you to draw them too. There's, let's do this one. And I will call this one ABC. And I'm going to call the angle from here to here. What's the measure of that angle? Any guesses, Grayson?
90 degrees.
How'd you know that?
Because when you use the protractor, it's going straight up, so
Yep.
it goes to 90.
Do you see that right here it makes a perfect corner? I want you to draw that perfect corner mark in there. In geometry, in math and geometry, when you see an angle with that little box there, they're telling you it's a 90-degree angle. Does anyone know the name that we give to a 90-degree angle? Noel?
A right angle?
This is known as a right angle. What if I drew, what do we got? 4 minutes. I'll name this X, Y, Z. I want to know the degrees of rotation from here to there. What do you think? Sam?
It's 180 degrees.
What do we call an angle that measures 180 degrees? Ha. Jayla,
A straight.
good job. This is known as a straight angle.
Knew
It
it.
actually doesn't look like an angle because it doesn't have a bend, but it actually is. It's a straight angle. Perfect. Let me think. What if, let's go to the next page. Last one. I want to measure one more angle with our protractors. I'm going to call this angle. Alyssa is an A. Abby is an A. I can't use A because I already got A, so I'll use B for Abby. And Noel. If you could draw an angle that looks something like that, I know it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay.
Sorry.
So now I'm going to use my protractor. You have two choices. You can say your angle starts here and rotates this way. Another option is you can say your angle starts here and goes this way. Either one is perfectly acceptable. I usually start with the line of the ray that's on the bottom that's flat because it's easiest. Protractor down, hold on the vertex, and then the line that's over here, I'm going to rotate. I'm going to line it up with the ray that I'm starting at. Zoom in just a little bit so you can see. So if I'm starting here, and if this ray is 0 degrees of rotation, because that's where I'm starting, where's my 0? On the bottom row of numbers or on the top row of numbers? Riley.
The bottom row numbers.
Right. So I'm only looking, see how this bottom row of numbers goes like this? Ignore those top numbers. Pretend they're not there for this count. So I'm going to come over all the way over here. Where does this ray pass through the protractor?
20.
What?
120 degrees.
120 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this angle is 120 degrees of rotation. Does that make sense? Now, when you're doing your independent work, there are 3 math videos that I want you to watch first. They're the Math Antics videos, and he does a very, very, very good job of explaining what points, lines, angles, degrees. He does a very good job of explaining what that means. Then when you're done watching the 3 videos, I want you to do your independent work. You're going to have to use the protractor on your computer screen, and that's okay. Do the best job that you can do. Are there any questions? Grayson?
Could you also call a straight angle a flat angle?
No.
Okay.
Usually a straight angle is also called a line, because that's what it is. It goes in both directions, in opposite directions forever. So it's either called a straight angle or a line. Okay. Any other questions? All right, you've got about 12 minutes until you need to be with Mrs. King. All right. Good job. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.